Welcome to Season 2 of the Excel podcast. Join your host Kevin Selwood as he talks to a variety of people with useful and interesting things to say about all things to do with instructing and driver training. Throughout the series, there will be a mixture of local personalities from the driver training industry in the Exeter and Torbay areas, as well as nationally acclaimed trainers. Episodes include informative discussions regarding all aspects of running your business, as well as opportunities to find out a bit more about each interviewee. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Excel podcast. And thank you very much for listening in whenever and wherever. Now, the last few sessions I've done have been with sort of people whose names are nationally recognised within the driver training industry. So I'm just taking a bit of a sidestep from that today, but it is a topic that is very relevant, especially to people who suffer from phobias and anxiety, which can cover a lot of learners and some instructors at different times. So I'm absolutely delighted to have with me today somebody who is a specialist in Reiki and Havening. And so a very warm welcome today to Janie Whittemore. Hi, Janie.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. Now, Janie, you and I first came across each other, what was it, about 3 years ago at the start of lockdown, when a mutual contact, Rachel Willoughby, started a Facebook Live sort of challenge type thing. And now, and a number of us got involved with that. A few weeks ago, I had one person on here who talked about another of my guests who said to me that even if he spoke rubbish, she could listen to his voice for hours. And you have the same effect on me, I think, and I've told you this before, but you have this voice that is just, to me, compelling to listen to. So hopefully other people will find the same effect as well.
Well, that's very kind of you. On my very compelling voice, especially for you. It does come in handy when you're trying to get people to relax, if you have a voice that's just kind of neutral, I guess, so that it doesn't stand out in any way, really. That's the ideal. So,
yes, but you only want them to relax so much and not fall asleep.
Well, a lot of good work and healing can be done when people are asleep. It often happens.
Yeah, well, I think we're probably going to delve into some of this during the course of this as well. So I think, first of all, I am sure that there are going to be people who will listen to this who will be quite intrigued by both of these topics and will want to know more about it. So maybe perhaps we could just start. Well, before we do that, I'm getting ahead of myself here. One thing I do like to do is get sort of a general timeline from people I speak to about how they've got to where they are today, and what it is that's sort of got you involved in all of this. Now, you can say as much or as little as you want to about what you've done previously and how you've got to where you are today, but I think it's quite interesting to know how people do arrive at what they are actually doing.
Okay, well, I guess I was a bit rubbish at school, although I was told I had a very good brain. Apparently I wasn't very good at using it. Or, it wasn't, my mum said I wasn't too interested in study, but I was always very interested in biology and how, we work. And how we work has always been my underpinning interest in everything I've done. And I initially went to drama school, actually. And I think even then, looking back, that was a study in how we work. Because if you're going to be a character, you have to understand what motivates people and how they feel. And so I began there, and then after leaving drama school, I did a few bits. I did some comedy, I did a tiny bit of this and a little bit of that, and I did quite a bit of waitressing. Because that's
Right.
what often happens when you're trying to,
Yeah.
do that sort of work, because the competition is so fierce. And I found as well, when I was doing other little jobs, what I was particularly good at was organizing for other people. So in fact, I became a PA to a director, and I was in London doing all these other kinds of jobs, but at the same time desperately wanting to do something that was much closer to my heart, which was helping people. So I decided to take a course or two in how I could help people. And the first thing I did was reflexology. And reflex
Right.
is putting pressure on specific points on the feet. And what introduced me to reflexology was me having.
I think we're just trying to see off a cat in the garden at the moment.
What introduced me to
Sorry about that.
reflexology.
Carry on, go on.
No worries at all. If it's not your cat, it'll be my dog or somebody else's cat. Yeah, so reflexology was interesting because a friend's mother gave me a session, and for some strange reason I didn't really understand, I burst into tears as soon as she started doing my feet. And I was in my teens actually at that point. I had no idea what was going on, but it's over the years I've worked out a lot more about the mind-body connection and how we hold on to things in our body. So I did reflexology, and then I discovered Reiki. And Reiki back then, I'm talking quite a long time ago, because I'm no spring chicken now, people thought you were a bit weird if you did something like Reiki, a bit witchy or a bit, culty. But now it's pretty well mainstream, in fact, and most people know somebody who either does it, or maybe they even have Reiki themselves. It's even done in hospitals and lots of places. So I did a bit of Reiki. I trained to do that and up to a master level, and then I, after that, found this other incredible technique called Havening. Havening meaning to create a safe haven. And that is a way that you can rewire the brain. So it's based in neuroscience, whereas the Reiki is much more to do with energy healing. And sort of works on all levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, if you like. But Havening works perhaps more to do with things that have got stuck in your mind. Whether you've witnessed something that was unpleasant and that's stuck in your mind, or whether you've experienced something that has really troubled you and you can't get rid of the pictures, or whether you've just even had something to do with an unpleasant situation. If you're very young, these things can really imprint in your mind in a way that sometimes it could be classed as a trauma. And one person's trauma is another person's nothing at all. And it entirely depends on the person. And a trauma doesn't have to be, it sounds very dramatic, doesn't it? But a trauma doesn't have to be a hugely obviously damaging thing. So at the moment, that's where my main work lies, helping people with trauma or anxiety, which is coming up so much. And especially since COVID, the levels of anxiety in the population have risen to, a sort of epidemic level. And everybody seems to have some level of anxiety, which is way beyond what is required for our lifestyle, because we're pretty cosseted, aren't we, in our lives most of the time now?
Yes.
In this country, luckily for us, in this part of the world, we do pretty much have what we want. Yes, we may have money worries, and some of us may be struggling with that. But really, if we're lucky to have a roof over our head and, the lifestyles that we lead, our energy for anxiety, our propensity to worry is going to then be focused on the smaller things, because we don't have to fight to survive so much as some other people. I hope that makes sense and kind of answers your question in rather a long-winded way.
I think we'll come back to part of that in a little while, in particular the havening bit, and because I can sort of talk about the session that you did with me a couple of years ago, that you may or may not remember.
Well, I make it my business to not remember all the details,
Oh, right,
all the
right,
clients that I ever deal
right.
with.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think my head would explode.
So before we get to that, is there a different sort of client or a different sort of, I don't know, anxiety or whatever that would be better suited to Reiki or Havening, or are they sort of
Yeah.
different ways of approaching the same thing?
That's such a good question, actually, Kevin, and it's quite useful for me to think about it and have to answer it, because how I put these things out there is very important. I guess you could say the latter, that they are different ways of helping the same kind of thing. But there will be people who would prefer a more direct, hands-on, uh, less kind of energy-based approach, because perhaps they don't understand how energy treatments can work. They've perhaps not had it or experienced what that feels like, and just don't think it would work for them. And those people are more drawn to havening because it's
Right.
more tangible for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, having done a little bit of research and looked at your website, there is quite a nice little 5 or 6 minute video trailer
There is.
on there about Havening. And I've got to admit, I didn't look at the Reiki page, but I think there's one there as well.
Yeah, you can't really demonstrate Reiki on a video.
No,
You could, but
no.
it'd be a bit boring because it doesn't, not much happens. You can't see the energy flowing as it does. But with havening, you can definitely see the movements. And the great thing about havening as well is that you can take it home if you like. So someone who
Yeah,
comes to see me will also be taught how to apply it to themselves. And that's what that
yeah,
little video is showing,
yes,
how in
yeah,
6 minutes you can change your state from very agitated to very calm just by following
yeah,
along or
yeah.
doing it yourself. Yeah.
Right, so let's just, I'll just remind you of what you did with me. And
I haven't really forgotten, but please go ahead.
it very much struck a chord when you said just now about what is one person's sort of fear and phobia is absolutely nothing to somebody else. And my phobia for a very, very long time was birds. Particularly, I could probably, if I had a chicken sitting on the table next to me now, I'd probably be quite okay with that. Um, the moment it starts flapping its wings is when I would start, oh my God, no. And even more stupidly, the big phobia was dead birds.
Well, none of it
Yeah.
is stupid, of course.
No, no, it's not. But to some people, it would be.
Yeah.
You know,
Some
they
people
think,
wouldn't understand how on earth you could feel that
and
way. But yeah.
it's a bit like this morbid fear some people have of spiders.
Hmm.
It's that international rescue is called here when my wife's in a room with a spider. I'm off that. Well, I remember. Her eldest son and I, we had this rather hilarious situation many years ago when we lived in West London. That the cat we had at the time was on its way into the house with something in its mouth. So immediately I thought it's a bird and I was off upstairs. It actually turned out to be a frog. Stuart has a phobia over frogs. So we actually met on the stairs, me coming back down, him going up. It was quite farcical, this whole thing, because we managed to get the cat to let go of the frog, which literally jumped head first into a vase of flowers. Some water.
That's funny.
But you know, what one person's phobia is somebody else's. So what?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about what has happened at some point to lodge
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
an alert in your brain about that thing, and then that alert has become too big.
Yeah, that's right. So, you know, and what I was particularly, because I thought, let's do this, because my particular fear was that when Eileen goes away, that's when the cat seem to know that's the time to bring a bird in. And how the heck do you deal with it? And I used to do it, if it ever happened, I'd have this great long broom and I'd just have the dustpan, holding it with my foot and trying to put it in the bin, in the dustpan, so I didn't have to look at it. Anyway, since we did that, of course, Sod's Law says that the cat has brought nothing in at all.
Ever since.
So the actual physical evidence that it worked, I don't have any real tangible proof.
Shall I deliver you a dead bird in the post?
It's so kind. What I was about to say, I think I might stop recording in a minute and say goodbye.
We could do live havening. Don't worry. If it arrived when you were on camera,
yeah, I know the door shut. I'm going to put something over the cat flap in a minute. So no, but what I was going to say before I was so rudely interrupted with the idea of a present, was that I don't feel that fear anymore. I've been near to birds, and I don't actually, and near to a dead bird, and I don't feel that it's anything like what it was before.
And you would only have to imagine yourself in that scenario and look at how you feel to know whether it's something that's shifted or not.
Yes,
it all happens in the mind anyway. So if you were to just imagine your worst case scenario and just see how you felt about that, it would be different to how it was before, right? Yeah.
There was a time many years ago when I couldn't watch The Birds, the Hitchcock film.
There's a lot of people. A lot of people have that exact same phobia. Lots of people. In fact, that's how that film is so famous, really, because it struck a chord with so many people.
Yeah. I've never had a problem with Norman Bates sitting in his rocking chair up in his top room or going in a shower.
Yeah.
But so what if we sort of move this on to the sort of particular scenario of a learner driver?
Yeah.
Let me give. I can give you a specific example, but you might want to talk maybe a bit more generally. But I had a girl. Well, she started with me about 2.5 years ago, who was, I say girl, she was 27, 28 at the time. And she'd put off driving for 10 years because she'd been in a bad car crash when she was 10 years old. And she told, she's quite upfront about all of this. And we did our first lesson, and we're driving along a fairly quiet, it's a national speed limit road, but it's next to a dual carriageway, so there's virtually no traffic because it all goes on the dual carriageway. And we're going along there. Now, I've got to make sure I say this correctly. I've just seen this other cat in the garden with nothing in its mouth, thank goodness. So it's not ours, so we might be shooing it away again in a minute. Oh, it's going. Sorry. I'm going off literally down the garden path with the cat now. Oh, sorry about this. It's coming back. My wife's going to come out and shoo it out again in a minute, probably. But as I said, these recordings are true life. These things happen. Anyway, Abby was told me all about this, and we're on our first lesson, and I coaxed her out of the lay-by onto this road. And I need to describe this properly as deep breathing, not, as I said in one session, heavy breathing, which rather gives the wrong impression. But and she was really, you could tell that it was a struggle. We were struggling to get to 20 mile an hour, and it was really hard work. And I just, in retrospect and hindsight, think, what if she'd been able to talk to you? We got her through, and it probably took longer than it would have done if she'd had something like what you're able to offer.
Yes. So the fear would obviously not have been about driving. It would have been the fear that was instilled in her mind at the moment of that accident.
Yeah.
And therefore, the brain took a snapshot of everything to do with that accident, including people, driving, cars, metal, driving wheels, or anything that could be in her mental picture, her snapshot, and the brain would have recognized all, familiar items in the learning to drive scenario, and her brain would have said, nope, we are not doing
Yeah.
this. This is danger, 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 freeze, flight, or fight,
Yeah. Yeah.
or get out, escape, anything to shut the body down, to keep it safe, to turn the other way, to do whatever you could to avoid any more pain. So that's what the brain is trying to do, keep her safe. And
Yeah.
yes, it is. It would have been helpful for her had I been able to work with her just once.
Yes. Yeah, because having worked with me once, I could feel a tangible difference when you got me to close my eyes and just imagine me back in the situation where I'm pretty sure that the whole phobia started from.
Yeah, most people only come once. Actually,
Yeah.
I never guarantee that, obviously, because
Yeah.
you can't know. And for some people, if they've built something up in their mind for 50 years, to have it disappear in a couple of hours is extraordinary. It does happen. Happened
Yeah.
last week, but I wouldn't set out to guarantee it. Under promise and over deliver. That's always better,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, people are a bit blown away, and it does take them a little bit of time sometimes as well to catch up with what has shifted, because
Yes.
it's difficult to imagine that fear that was there is no longer there. It's
Yeah.
difficult to get your head around sometimes.
So what sort of level of phobia would, or anxiety or stress,
Hmm.
or is there no particular sort of threshold for this that either Reiki or Havening would work or work effectively? Or is that a silly question?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. It's not a silly question, but I'm not sure if I understand it correctly, because it would work for any level.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Anyone who was slightly nervous, even if they were on a level of what you might call normal, which doesn't exist, obviously, because we're all different. But, everybody is going to be a bit nervous when they learn to drive, and quite rightly so, because you're in charge of a
Yeah.
dangerous machine. So, of course, there's going to be nerves, and it would be a
Yeah.
bit foolhardy if you didn't have any. But I guess anything from mild nerves, it could help just to give confidence, to someone with a full-blown phobia, trauma, anything in between. And the thing about it would be mostly the fact that it's not really often about driving. It will be associated
Yes.
with
Yeah.
something else, whether it was somebody else was driving, whether they saw a movie that terrified them about driving, whether, it could be so many things. Sometimes it's a personal issue. Somebody just doesn't um, feel that they're good enough at learning things. They may have had difficult experiences in the classroom learning. And so they've
Yeah.
translated that into, I just can't learn. I'm going to be
Yeah.
rubbish. I'm going to fail at this from the start because that's what's happened to me in school. Those experiences can be so traumatic for children
Yes.
that they just shut down when it comes to
Yeah.
just the idea of learning anything new. Or being
Yeah.
judged is another one.
Yeah.
Judged.
I had a very surprising experience about 3 or 4 weeks ago when I did a mock test with a lad who had become a very confident driver, and we did a mock test. And I'm saying to him, at the next roundabout, turn right, second exit, and there's 2 lanes as you approach. And he stayed in the left lane. And he stayed in the left lane. And they got to the point and said, we're going to need the other lane. No, stayed in the left lane. And we went off in totally the wrong direction. Fortunately, it was a lane where you didn't have to give way. It was a dedicated one, so we could go off. And I thought, oh, what's going on here? And we managed to pull over somewhere a little bit further up the road. And he just announced to me, for the first time in all the time I'd been seeing him, I panic in exams.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, right. That's a good time to tell me with your test in 3 weeks' time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I cope with school and college exams
Mm,
because I can scrape through with an E,
mm,
but I panic when I open the exam paper.
mm.
Oh, golly, how do we deal with this? And in my mind, I thought there's yourself or there's Diane Hall, two people who, both of whom I would recommend to anybody who had an issue like this. But we didn't really have the time. I thought, crikey, how are we going to get any of this done? Anyway, we changed the parameters. He did another mock test with Christy, my business partner. That went okay. Fortunately, a week later, he sailed through his test. Somehow, we sorted it out. But
Right.
I think it's probably more by luck than judgment. But
Yeah.
now the exam situation has gone, I'm absolutely certain he'll be a really super driver.
Yeah. There's a lot of people like that. And they come under the category perhaps of yes, fear of, well, I can't class it into one category actually. No.
No.
I was just thinking of a family member I worked on quite recently for driving. And her feeling was that of that one of being judged and
Yeah.
and being found not up to scratch, and that can be quite paralyzing for some people. Yeah. And she passed her test. Yay.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that sort of leads me quite nicely onto the other category of person of this feeling of being judged. Is when we get people who want to train to become an instructor.
Right.
The first session that we do with them is an assessment drive. So there they are for the first time for goodness knows how long, that somebody's actually sitting there as you're judging their driving.
Yeah.
Now, there are very few people who don't know how to drive properly. Now, I would defy anybody to take a driving test and not pass or get very close to it, because everybody knows how they should drive properly, or the vast majority too. Whether they do normally or not is
Yeah,
another
exactly.
matter entirely. But I think most people, when push comes to shove, know how to drive properly. But that's one level of, I would say for most people, mild anxiety. But for driving instructors, the real issue comes when they're getting to their last qualifying test,
Mhm.
particularly because you get three opportunities to pass because three tests. First one's a theory test, second one's a driving test. So you can take the theory, just like with learners, you can take the theory test as many times as you like, but at £81 a time, you don't really want to do a lot.
Mhm.
And once you've passed that, you've got 2 years to get through, and you're only allowed 3 attempts at the part 2, the driving test, and 3 attempts at the part 3, the instructor test, which is the one that most people, if they're going to really struggle with, that's where the real anxiety and stress levels hit.
Mhm.
It's similar for a qualified instructor. We get what's called a standards check every roughly 4 years, but it can vary, and you get 3 goes at that. Now, I've got somebody who I know is on the last chance with that. And that's a real stress buster,
Mm.
of stress level there, because what do they do if they don't pass it? Their whole livelihood has
Mm.
gone.
Yeah.
So the stress levels, I think, and there's somebody on our local Facebook group who has actually admitted that the last chance for qualifying is coming up next month. I'm not sure I'd be as brave as that to say when it was, but good for him, because he got so much support
Support. Yeah.
from people.
Mm.
It's hopefully that's buoyed him up, that there are people out there, but it doesn't really change the actual physical situation for that person.
Mm.
So I assume what you can offer is something that can at least reduce the stress.
Yeah. I mean, we're not, yes, support is wonderful. And as you say, can really buoy you up. And having people wish you well does actually go quite a long way. But like you say, it may not affect physical things on the day, but havening can actually change how your brain
Yeah.
is going to work on the day.
Yes.
That's the
Yeah.
difference. So it's not a coping strategy. It's not CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're learning how to
Right.
manage
Yeah.
when you're, say, triggered. It's not that. It's actually changing what causes that panic in the first place, or that
Yeah.
anxiety, or that worry, and turning it into hopefully something that's absolutely fine, even a positive.
Yeah.
Because we can not only remove negative thinking, but we can put positive thinking in, as in, I'm a
Right.
fantastic driver. I'm an amazing driver. I'm very lucky because I find driving extremely easy and it comes naturally to me. Those kind of statements that we can make when we're undergoing havening therapy will lodge in the brain and can change your thinking.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right. So, yeah, I think we've covered most of the things that I wanted to. So, just sort of in conclusion,
Mm.
what if somebody felt, having listened to this, yeah, I think Janie might be able to help me. Now, the the physical or the logistics of this, of course, are that we are down in Exeter and area, and you're in Cheltenham.
Mm. But how
So,
are we communicating right now?
well, yes, but I assume that, well, I know Havening works like this, so that would be, and Reiki sort of needs to be in the same place, or
No,
doesn't? Oh,
no.
right. Oh,
I do remote Reiki all the time,
oh, right.
all over the place,
Yeah.
internationally. It
Oh,
doesn't matter
right.
where you are, you can have
Oh,
a Reiki session. And the beauty of doing it by Zoom is that you can just stay in your own home and you don't have to drive
yeah.
home afterwards. Because some people fall asleep or get so relaxed that, they don't really want to get up and have to drive home. So it's a brilliant thing that we would have an initial consultation for both Reiki or Havening. And then I would say, well, where do you want to be for your session? Do you want to lie down? Do you want to get into bed? Do you want to lie down on your sofa?
All right.
So we start off seeing each other, and then we can either leave the camera on or just turn it off. And I will continue to send the Reiki to them. And at the end, we will
Yeah.
catch up. And so it works just fine, just the same.
Oh, oh, that's brilliant. 'Cause I hadn't really clocked that one, but yeah, I think I would be surprised if there's not at least one person who listens to this at some point. Might be in the next week or so, because I'm planning to put this one out this Friday.
Yeah.
But it might be in 6 months or a year's time, because this will be available on the podcast for forever. Well,
Mm.
so yeah, I can honestly think that I would recommend this to one or two people who've got these stressful situations
Mm.
coming up, and yeah, once it's out there for people to see, because I will put the link to your website in the notes for this as
Yeah.
well.
Great.
So if
Anyone
anybody who,
can either book directly straight away through my
yeah,
website, or they're always welcome to have a chat with me. And I like to chat on a Zoom anyway,
yeah,
so that we can have a proper chat. It is like a
yeah,
face-to-face meeting then, and suss each other out a bit and see if they think, they can work with me, and I see if I think I can help them. And of course, that's free. So there's no pressure on anyone, even once they've had a chat with me,
yeah,
to go ahead. But we just have a little talk and
yeah,
see what kind of thing it is that they're dealing with and how I can best help them. Sometimes I do a combination of treatments. Reiki is very good for overall calm and peace and relaxation, and finding that kind of still place inside you, which when you're feeling very anxious is extremely difficult to find because there's so much stuff whirling around in your head. But inside everyone, you can access a small, still, quiet place. And so that's also good, as well as or instead of, whichever people feel
yeah.
drawn to, I'd say. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Well, I'm very grateful to you for giving up the time for this, because I think although it's not what some people might call mainstream driving stuff, I think that there is more value in this than there has been in some bits of some of the other things. But it's different, I think, not better. It's different, and it's going to appeal to some people, whereas another podcast or another topic might appeal to others. But I'm extremely grateful to you, and I have no doubt there are going to be some people who will listen to this and think, yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, great. I mean, something for everyone, I guess. That's
Yeah.
what you want to do, isn't it? And
Yeah.
most people know what it's like to feel nervous. If it isn't about driving, maybe they have it in some other area of their life.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's
where
one
it
thing.
could lead.
Yeah. Yeah. We do get people who sort of, some of them, I wouldn't say live their lives on social media, but do maybe tell you things, and even when we're in our cars, people tell us things that maybe they shouldn't,
Right.
or puts us into a not such a difficult situation, but you sort of think, oh, now maybe there's somebody who might be able to help you on this.
I mean, personal difficulties that they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I guess if they're trying to learn to drive and they're going through something else at the same time, it will affect their driving, their confidence.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So absolutely, that's a very good example.
Mm.
It's not really about the driving, but if you can sort
Yeah.
that other thing out, then it will obviously have a calming effect on everything else.
Yes, well, it must be the same. You can apply it to anything. It doesn't have to be driving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Somebody's having trouble with their sort of personal relationship or with money, it'll affect their work, or if they're having trouble at work,
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can take over, can't they?
Yeah.
Some big worries can just start to colour everything you try to do.
Yeah. Lovely. Oh, that's great. Now, I won't take up any more of your time. That your dog has been very good.
Wow, thank you. It's always a pleasure for me to talk about what I do. So I just love it. I love it. And it's just so rewarding.
Yeah, well, it's great.
I really enjoyed it.
Good. And I can go and have my cup of tea and that giant Eccles cake that's waiting for me.
Don't forget your Eccles cake. No.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, Janie. I really did enjoy that.
Oh, great. Good to talk to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks. Right. Bye.
Bye.